This tale begins with the survivors from the first game traveling south through France to escape the scar of the rat plague that swallowed up their home region, and the characters are all getting a little too comfortable, at least when they're not being reminded about blood-based, rat-related curses. Speaking of which, just as they're settling it down, the group's fortunes soon take a turn for the worse, and it's not long before you're knee-deep in slurry, cadavers, and beady-eyed rodents. Trouble comes in two flavors, people and rats. Of course, this means you'll be cracking heads with Amicia's sling and scaring away rodents with light and fire. After only a few chapters of Requiem, all the systems from the previous game have been reintroduced, leaving a large part of the adventure to explore new territory. Human encounters have more options for stealth and are much more evasive than their former equivalents. Between all the ways to take out enemies and uses for items, always leaves you with a lingering sense at the end of every section that you could have done things differently. You also need to decide when to call on specific skills of your companion characters, whether that's Lucas, Hugo, or one of the new faces that join your group. In Hugo's case, that can even mean taking control of a small pack of rats, then moving them from a rodent's eye view as they tear through a scene, munching anyone unfortunate enough to be in the way. Speaking of the rats, when it's just you and them, they're still in effect as part of the game's environmental puzzles, and function quite mechanically, like a living sea of lava, albeit one that can be shifted and shaped to some extent by carving out paths of light. The challenge for Requiem was always going to be keeping the chittering black mass intimidating, given how much Innocence had us exploit their predictable behavior. To an extent, it succeeds by increasing the numbers, having them erupt in tsunamis that crash through stone walls, with a momentum that might even swamp and choke out valuable light sources. Toying with them can also feel more dangerous, as you might push them away temporarily, only for them to team back as you enter what you thought was safe ground. The real force of Requiem, though, doesn't come from any one component, more its constant motion. As situations evolve, it adds fresh ways you can interact with scenes, whether that's through new tools, different allies that tilt the tenor of encounters more towards stealth or combat, or occasional set pieces that serve up a different problem altogether.
I'm not ready for this.
No one could be ready for this.
Please, you gotta stop this.
There are drawbacks to this ambition, though. The broader and more organic systems can clash and become complicated. Partner characters can get stuck on scenery, and stealth can be pernickety, with too many lines of sight to keep track of. And these issues can lead to a lot of trial and error by reloading your checkpoints. And this can sometimes lead to getting frustrated and just killing everyone instead of using the stealth mechanics, which feels like a bit of a cop-out. It's hard to begrudge the game for its drawbacks when so much of what it does lands exactly as intended. Frustrations fade away in the scope of a full-spectrum action-adventure that shifts gear into exciting chases, then cerebral puzzles and teamwork, confidently keeping hold of your attention for almost 20 hours. A Plague Tale, Requiem is a bold sequel that raises the stakes with an even defter touch. The previous game, Innocence, largely worked within the boundaries set by bigger names, most notably The Last of Us. Requiem, by contrast, feels like a spread of the wings, buoyed by its predecessor's successes to forge an unmistakable identity. In terms of production values among comparable titles, it still bows before Sony heavyweights such as The Last of Us Part 2 and God of War, but little else. And more importantly, it grows outwards from the elements that shined in the original. The palpable texture of its medieval setting, the pathos of its character relationships, and the persistent menace of the rats. By building everything up around that core, Requiem is often more compelling and relatable than its celebrated peers.